Welcome back to Main Street Living. Danielle, Quincy, there's been a movement over the past few years to focus our dollars on shopping local at small businesses. So, if we can support our neighbors instead of a big box store, why wouldn't we do that, right?
Absolutely, Cheryl. I mean, entrepreneurship has always played a big part in boosting local economies, but it also plays an important role in changing our society. Our next guest is doing both of those things in a big way. Please welcome to Main Street Living, Rushell Gordon. Thanks so much for making time for us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So, a few years ago, you left a successful corporate career to become an entrepreneur. Why did you feel drawn to open your own business, especially at the beginning of a pandemic?
Well, the plan wasn't to open during the pandemic, but as you know, it takes a little while after you sign your lease to do a build out. Well, I signed my lease in May of 2019, and it took a while to get permits and build out and so forth done. So by the time I completed, it was already March of 2020. So that's when I got my final approvals, and obviously the world was shutting down at the same time. So I decided to wait a few weeks just because, that's what everyone thought it was going to take for the pandemic to kind of get back to normal. And unfortunately, it didn't. So I decided to open May of 2020, and we did a Mother's Day tea to go. And that's how we started. So the plan wasn't the pandemic, but it turned out to work out for us well, that it was the pandemic.
Yeah, and Rochelle, what's crazy is the idea that the pandemic was almost 3 years, well, just about 3 years ago, right? So that's a fast 3 years. So how do you feel tea connects with the people? Like, tell us a little bit more about this shop, Bliss Tea and Treats.
Yeah, so I grew up drinking tea. I'm from Panama, so we grew up drinking tea, and I felt that during the pandemic, it was even more essential because people really were looking for alternatives and healthy alternatives. And we spent a lot of time talking to our customers about what they needed. And there was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of depression. And, we also ended up creating a tea. As a matter of fact, the tea that I'm drinking, it's called Mental Clarity. And Mental Clarity, we created this tea for the kids when they were going back to school. So we did an educational workshop for some homeschoolers, and we blended this tea with them. And it has ingredients that really helps your brain to think clearly. And the kids loved it. We loved it. So we kept it on the menu for everyone. So those kinds of things evolved as a result of the pandemic. So it was really cool.
Well, I think the tea is working. You sound very clear. The clarity is there. Bliss Tea and Treats is, of course, in Oceanside, California, just north of San Diego. And you are on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. You're very involved in your community. I know that you took time to learn about other Black business owners in your area. What can you tell us about what you found?
Well, it was actually difficult to find information. So I reached out to Christy Hawthorne over at the Historical Society, who I know from the chamber, and she actually didn't have a lot of information. And Christy is an amazing historian, and she does a lot of research. So we decided to post a form and do a social media campaign to collect data on Black-owned businesses. I was also very interested in the history of tea rooms in Oceanside, and we found that 90 years ago there was one that was here. So what we found was people started submitting data, but then we wanted to do something with the data that we got, right? So as we started to learn about more Black-owned businesses, they didn't necessarily have to be open, but we just wanted to know the history of Black-owned businesses in Oceanside. So we were able to go back about at least 90 years and collect data that were here. Yeah, so we have a pretty good list, and that list helped us to create stories that we used in the show.
Wow, like how difficult was that process? Because I mean, gathering up all those stories of fellow Black entrepreneurs that weren't part of the record, like it's got to be a task, right?
Yeah. So what we did was Christy was able to do interviews when we contacted people, then we were able to do interviews. And sometimes it was interviews with their families, right? So if someone, we interviewed someone's nephew or someone's daughter to get the stories and then to get pictures of them, because one of the main things about having information in the Historical Society is you also want to have some photos available. So we were able to scan some photos and get those in the archives, as well as, just doing interviews. We did a lot of interviews to collect the data that we needed.
Okay.
And then you kind of alluded to a show. So why did you decide to tell these Black business owners' stories in a performance event? And who were some of these featured?
So we decided to tell the stories because, we were sitting with the Brooks Theater director, and like, remember the days when you would sit at the dining room table or on the porch, and your elders, right, would tell these stories. And sometimes, I know with my family, it's like, yeah, okay, I heard that story at least a million times. But now as I'm older, I want to hear those stories, right? Because I feel like our time is limited and we may not get those stories for very long. So because Black people didn't start migrating to Oceanside until Camp Pendleton came here in the 40s. So we realized that 80 years, there's a lot of those stories that will go away and we'll never hear them, right? Because a lot of that generation will start to leave us. So we felt it was really important to tell those stories now so that we can have that on video, archive. People can have that, to hold on to, and then continue to tell the stories so that we always know that they're there. So that was the inspiration. The inspiration was, wow, how old are these stories and how much time do we have? And we realized we don't really have that much time. So we need to start telling them.
So cool, because I mean, like, mad kudos to you. And I got to ask you, like, what was it like to watch your idea being brought to life at the theater? Because I believe it happened on February 11th.
Yeah. So I was at every single rehearsal.
Yeah.
And it was the rehearsal before the actual show that I had the big cry. Like I saw it really happening. They were off script. They were in costume. And I saw myself on the stage. And it just all became real. To see the actors go from, learning about the individuals that they were playing and then to become those people. So we had real pictures of those individuals on the screen as they were portraying them. So it made it real. And yeah, it was probably the most amazing thing I've ever experienced.
So cool.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
other people want to experience it. Is there a way people can see the generational Black pioneers performance?
Yes. So it will be videotaped. It has been videotaped. We have 2 more shows on Friday for the high schools, but we will have it online. It will be available on the Bliss, teatreats.com, and it will also be available on the Oceanside Historical Society website.
Awesome. Well, Rushell, we want to give you a lot of props. Thank you so much. We got your information up here on the screen so viewers can find more information about your business, Bliss Tea and Treats as well. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing and for stopping by the show today.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day, you guys.
No problem. You do the same. All right. Well, Danielle, women are ruling the world right now, right? So
Looks
cool.
that way.
So, yeah. So up next, we're going to meet an inspiring mayor. You don't want to miss it. Stay right there.